For more of this kind of content, you can subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment. Relics were easiest when they understood their place. From the Council flagship's upper gallery, High Arbiter Keth observed the tactical projection with mild interest. Human vessels drifted at the edge of the array. 67 signatures tagged in amber. Angular hulls, excess mass, kinetic hardpoints exposed like museum pieces. The gallery murmured approval as the classifier finished its sweep. Primitive. Survivability doctrine, Keth said, voice smooth. Armor instead of fields. Mass instead of elegance. The analyst node pulsed confirmation. Human metallurgy, indexed 3 centuries behind Council standards. Power curves inefficient. Propulsion blunt. No adaptive lattice. No quantum veil. Their ships were relics by any reasonable metric. Processing would be brief. Keth signed the order, without ceremony. 10,000 coalition vessels, adjusted vectors across a sphere 0.3 AU wide. The humans were already bracketed, every firing solution solved down to milliradian certainty. The gallery screens showed projected timelines. First contact in 90 seconds, total neutralization in under 12 minutes. Salvage windows opening by hour 1. They'll burn fast, an aide offered. Like the others. Keth allowed a thin smile. The Council had processed 31 non-compliant species in the last cycle alone. The pattern was consistent. Shock, collapse, compliance. The humans would add another entry to the archive, another cautionary footnote for the outer systems. A transmission request blinked. Human origin. Unencrypted. Keth waved it through, indulgent. The human voice was calm, no tremor, no ritual. A single sentence refusing disarmament and withdrawal, followed by a formal identification of the lead vessel. USS Blackstar. Laughter rippled across the gallery. A ship named like a superstition, captained by a species still counting wars in generations. Keth muted the channel. Record their refusal, Keth said. Mark as willful obstruction. Begin processing sequence. Energy arrays warmed across. The fleet. Lances came online in synchronized bands, power climbing past 40%, then 60%. The humans did not maneuver. They did not scatter or attempt evasive bloom. They held formation, a compact wedge of metal and inertia. Fear response delayed, an analyst noted, or absent, Keth replied. Either way, irrelevant. A countdown began. 10 seconds to first fire. They brought armor to a mathematics problem. The stinger hung in the air as the timer reached 0. Council lances discharged in perfect harmony, a curtain of coherent light spanning thousands of kilometers. It was enough firepower to strip continents, to shear stations into vapor. The gallery leaned forward, ready to watch the relics dissolve. Sensors flared, impacts registered, and the human ships did not vanish. Returns showed bloom, ablation, heat spikes, but hull integrity persisted. Armor layers shed mass exactly as designed. Internal. Temperatures stabilized. Energy dispersion graphs flattened instead of spiking. Recalculate, Keth snapped. The analyst node pulsed, uncertain. Energy absorption at 92%. Losses. Negligible. Silence replaced laughter. Keth stared at the projection as the human formation began to move, engines flaring with deliberate force. Acceleration vectors pointed inward, straight toward the heart of the coalition sphere. Processing had been scheduled. Now it was being delayed. The humans answered without raising their voices. From the flagship gallery, Keth watched the channel reopen, this time routed through every coalition command node. The human speaker appeared only as a waveform and a transponder code. No titles, no visual. This is Captain Reyes of the USS Blackstar, the voice said. We acknowledge your demand for disarmament. A pause followed. Exactly 3 seconds. Long, we refuse. The word landed cleanly, not defiant, not emotional. Final murmurs spread across the gallery. Keth lifted one hand, stilling them. State your reasoning, Keth said, opening the return channel. You are outnumbered 149 to 1. Your weapons are obsolete. Compliance will preserve civilian life. The reply came immediately. "We are not here to be preserved," Reyes said. "We are here to hold." Telemetry updated as the human fleet adjusted spacing by fractions of a kilometer. 67 ships locked into a tighter wedge, overlapping point defense arcs, armor planes angling forward. No attempt at retreat, no decoys, no feints. "They don't maneuver like prey," an aide whispered. Keth ignored him. "Your position violates Council interdiction," Keth said. "Power down your drives, jettison armaments, prepare for boarding. Processing will be humane." Another pause. "Shorter this time." "We do not submit crews to forced processing," Reyes said. "We do not surrender weapons under threat, and we do not allow boarding by entities that classify people as material." The word people drew a few scoffs. Keth leaned back, studying the data. Human drives were hot now, output steady at combat cruise, not burn. They were conserving, waiting. Distance closed marginally as coalition vessels drifted inward, tightening the sphere to 0.25 AU. "You misunderstand your situation," Keth said. "You are contained. You cannot break a 10,000-ship cordon." Reyes did not argue the math. "We don't need to break it," she said. "We just need you close." A few officers frowned. Keth felt irritation, sharp and unfamiliar. "Your species has no standing here," Keth said. "No treaty recognition, no council seat. You will be processed, or you will be destroyed." The human voice softened, not with fear, but with something, like courtesy. "For the record," Reyes said, "this transmission fulfills our obligation to seek peaceful resolution. Timestamp logged. All channels recorded. A beat. Further attempts to disarm us will be treated as hostile intent." Silence followed. Not the silence of a cut channel, but the deliberate stillness of someone waiting. The human ships held position, no panic spikes, no erratic thrust. Power curves remained flat, disciplined. Ammunition bays stayed sealed. Even now they were not firing. "They're stalling," an aide said. "Buying time!" "For what?" Keth snapped. Before the aide could answer, long range. Sensors flagged new data. Human acceleration tolerances updated. Mass-to-thrust ratios recalculated upward. Much upward. The numbers did not fit the earlier models. Keth closed the channel. "So noted," Keth said. "Escalation authorized. Increase. Firing density by 20%. Collapse the range." The order propagated in milliseconds. Coalition vessels edged closer, confidence reasserting itself through numbers and doctrine. On the projection, the human wedge did not move. They waited, engines humming, armor scorched, weapons cold. They had refused surrender, and they were exactly where they intended to be. The second volley was meant to erase doubt. From Keth's vantage, the coalition fleet tightened to 0.22 AU, firing density climbing by exactly 20%. Lances overlapped, particle beams braided. Exotic spectra joined the strike, frequencies tuned to slip through armor and unravel matter at the molecular edge. This was not punishment, it was instruction. The projection flared white, impacts rippled across the human wedge in synchronized bands. Hulls vanished behind incandescent bloom. Sensors screamed as temperatures spiked past survivable limits, then stalled. Ablative layers peeled away in controlled sheets. Heat sinks dumped energy into space in glittering plumes. Beneath it all, the ships held. "Damage report," Keth demanded. The analyst's node hesitated. Energy absorption holding at 91.7%. Structural loss confined to outer mass. No core breaches. Impossible numbers. Human armor was not resisting the fire. It was consuming it. Layered mass drank the energy, converted it to heat, shed it, then presented fresh surface, inelegant, brutal, effective. "They're using mass as a capacitor," an aide said, incredulous. "They planned for this." Another wave hit. This one lasted 47 seconds. Sustained burn designed to overwhelm any passive system. Coalition doctrine dictated collapse by second 30. At second 48, the humans were still there. "They're still there." The words escaped someone's mouth before discipline caught up. Keth's jaw tightened. "Increase yield." "We're approaching safe limits," the aide replied. "Friendly interference, do it." The third strike pushed into forbidden margins. Space warped under the load. Coalition ships adjusted fire lanes to avoid mutual attenuation. The humans took it head-on, range now closing as their drives pushed them inward at a steady 0.04 ca. Human cruiser lost a quarter of its outer mass. The chunk drifted free, glowing, then shattered into harmless vapor. The ship's velocity did not change. Another stinger of data pulsed across the board. Internal casualties, minimal. Compartments, sealed. Crews operating through heat and vibration with practiced calm. They trained for sustained impact, the analyst said. Crew stress indicators remain within tolerance. They're letting us burn ourselves out. The realization hit the gallery like cold water. A fourth volley began and ended early. Coalition capacitors dipped, cooling cycles lagged. The fire slackened by necessity, not mercy. On the human side, something changed. The wedge tightened by another 300 meters. Armor angles shifted. Point defense systems came alive, not to intercept fire, but to clear debris. Their hulls were scarred, now blackened and rough, shedding heat in slow waves, still advancing. They're turning our opening strike into their approach corridor, an aide said. Keth stared at the numbers, distance collapsing. Energy efficiency plateaued, not failing, 91%, 92%. The line refused to drop. They brought armor to a star. The phrase tasted bitter. A final data burst crossed the screen. Ammunition reserves untouched. Weapon safeties still engaged. The humans had not answered fire with fire. They were measuring. Keth felt something new creep into his calculations. Not fear, uncertainty. The coalition fleet had committed minutes of sustained firepower and achieved nothing decisive. The humans had lost mass, paint, and patience. At 0:18 AU, the human engines flared brighter. The energy phase was ending. Mass was about to speak. The shift was subtle, then undeniable. At 0:18 AU, the human engines changed pitch, not louder, cleaner. Power curves sharpened, thrust vectors aligning with a precision that cut through the projection like a blade. The wedge elongated, Blackstar at its point, and began to accelerate. Vector change confirmed, the analyst called out. Human, fleet increasing velocity. Current acceleration, recalculating. The numbers lagged, then snapped into place. 0.06 C and climbing. That drew attention. Coalition doctrine favored distributed control, a living sphere of overlapping fields and fire. It worked because opponents broke apart under pressure, scattering into predictable arcs. The humans did neither. They pushed, straight through the geometry, compressing space and forcing the outer rings of the cordon to adjust. Counter-maneuver, Keth ordered. Maintain distance, preserve sphere integrity. The order propagated, but execution lagged. 10,000 ships could move, but not instantly, and not together. Micro-delays compounded. Gaps opened. Kilometers at first, then tens. The human wedge aimed for those seams. They're not dodging, an aide said. They're selecting. Human formation control was brutal in its simplicity. No flourish, no feints. Each ship held its lane within meters, overlapping thrust wash, trusting. The hulls beside them to absorb stray fire. The wedge tightened again, distance between vessels shrinking to less than 200 meters as velocity climbed past 0.8 C. Energy fire resumed, scattered now, less coordinated. The humans did not slow. A cruiser at the edge of the wedge took a glancing lance. Armor flared, shed, stabilized. The ship stayed in line. They're using acceleration as a weapon, the analyst said, forcing us to move or be intersected. Coalition ships began to peel back, local commanders breaking formation to avoid collision and friendly fire. The sphere deformed, once smooth arcs buckling under the pressure of mass and speed. Formation collapse probability rising, the analyst warned. Currently at 17%. Keth watched the geometry unravel. Human trajectories were short, direct, unforgiving. They were not chasing ships. They were collapsing space, turning a cordon into a maze of bad options. Blackstar surged ahead another fraction, engines burning hot enough to glow through scarred armor. Range fell through 0.12 AU. They'll overshoot, an aide insisted. They can't break in time. They don't intend to, Keth said slowly. The realization settled as human vectors updated again. They were not planning to stop at optimal energy range. They were driving into knife distance, where elegance failed and mass ruled. They're collapsing us inward, the analyst said. If current acceleration holds, close-range engagement in 4 minutes. 4 minutes. Coalition captains began issuing contradictory orders. Some pushed forward to maintain pressure. Others fell back to preserve spacing. Fire lanes crossed, targeting solutions degraded. Human ships threaded the chaos with machine precision. A stinger of telemetry flashed across the board. Blackstars. Forward batteries rotated, safeties disengaging for the first time. They're still holding fire, an aide whispered. Yes, Keth said, until it matters. At 0.09 AU, the coalition sphere was no longer a sphere. It was a series of fractures, and the humans were accelerating straight through them. The first human shot was not spectacular. At 0.05 AU, Blackstar's forward rails cycled once. No warning flare, no energy bloom, just a mass driver discharging a tungsten slug at a calculated fraction of light speed. Sensors barely caught it before it arrived. A coalition destroyer ceased to exist. The slug punched through layered fields as if they were mist, crossed the hull in under a millisecond, and exited with enough residual velocity to tear a second ship open behind it. Debris expanded outward in a silent, lethal cone. Then the rest of the human fleet spoke. Railguns fired in disciplined cadence, recoil dampers biting hard as mass after mass crossed the gap. Missiles followed, not swarming, but sequenced, each flight timed to exploit the holes the slugs created. Point defense grids overloaded. Targeting solutions vanished as ships died faster than the network could reassign priorities. This is close-range fire, an aide said, stunned. They're inside optimal defense envelopes. The vanguard evaporated. Coalition cruisers tried to roll away, drives flaring in panic, but acceleration came too late. Human kinetics did not chase heat signatures or energy spikes. They followed math. Predictive arcs intersected hulls with brutal certainty. One salvo. 7 ships gone, another, 12 more. Casualty counters began to tick upward in jumps instead of increments. Keth watched the numbers climb, disbelief giving way to grim comprehension. The humans had waited for this distance. Every second of restraint had been an investment. They're firing through us, the analyst said, not at us. Missiles detonated among tightly packed formations, not to destroy directly, but to force spacing failures. Coalition vessels collided or sheared shields trying to evade physical threats they were never designed to face. Then, the nukes came. Not planetary killers. Tactical devices, low yield by human standards, detonated at precise offsets to turn space into expanding walls of radiation and debris. Ships caught between blast fronts and incoming slugs had nowhere to go. A battleship split along its keel, armor folding inward as if crushed by an invisible fist. A carrier's hangar bay vented fighters into fire. The projection could no longer keep up. Icons vanished faster than they could be tagged as destroyed. The vanguard, 3 full layers of the cordon, was gone in under 90 seconds. This is the verdict. The line appeared unbidden in Keth's thoughts as Blackstar surged through. The wreckage, rails cycling, missiles reloading with mechanical calm. Human ships advanced into the gaps they had created, firing only when solutions were absolute. A coalition frigate transmitted surrender codes mid-burn. Its weapons went dark. Human. Fire skipped it. They're bypassing surrendered vessels, an aide said. Marking them, not engaging. Of course they were. Dominance did not require annihilation, only control. Behind the human wedge, debris fields spread like storm fronts. Sensors registered secondary collisions as retreating coalition ships blundered into wreckage or each other. Formation coherence dropped below 40%. Vanguard losses confirmed, the analyst said quietly. 2,300 vessels neutralized. 94 seconds. Silence gripped the gallery. Blackstar's rails fell silent for the first time since opening fire. Missiles ceased their launch cycles. The human fleet did not pursue fleeing ships beyond firing solutions. They held the breach. Keth stared at the ruin where certainty had been. Energy doctrine had failed, numerical supremacy had failed, elegance had failed, mass had not. At 004 AU, the human formation restructured, widening slightly to accommodate the wreckage corridor they had carved. The verdict had been delivered. The sentence was over. What followed would be decided by those still alive. The battle did not end when the guns paused. As wreckage drifted and radiation faded, the wider map resolved. Beyond the immediate kill zone, the coalition sphere still existed, fractured, disordered, but vast. Thousands of ships remained. Systems flickered as comm relays re-established themselves, and with them came data the gallery had never intended. The humans to see. Blackstar saw it all. Civilian traffic routes lit up in pale blue. Population centers followed, tagged automatically as non-combatant. Behind them, red markers bloomed, processing hubs, labor depots, transit chains feeding inward. Toward the Council core. Data leak confirmed, the analyst said. Human fleet has access to strategic civilian overlays. Keth felt a cold tightening. Those layers were restricted even within the Council. On the human channel, Captain Reyes spoke again. Her voice carried across coalition frequencies, untranslated, unfiltered. "We are detecting 20 million civilians within your engagement envelope," she said. "Evacuation corridors are obstructed by your fleet." The words were measured, precise. "We are opening lanes," Reyes continued. "Mark your non-combatant vessels and move them now." Laughter did not follow this time. "They're posturing," an aide said weakly. "They can't manage evacuation at this scale." Human ships began to shift, not forward, sideways. The wedge loosened into a broad arc, kinetic batteries tracking outward, not inward. Fire control solutions updated, then locked. Not on warships, but on the empty space between them. "They're creating corridors," the analyst said slowly. 3 primary lanes, each 30,000 kilometers wide. Coalition captains hesitated. Doctrine did not cover this. Retreating civilians through an active battlefield was inefficient, risky, unclean. The humans did it anyway. Transports surged toward the openings. First a trickle, then a flood. Human point defense tracked, and debris and stray fire, intercepting anything that crossed the lanes. When a coalition cruiser drifted too close, a single rail round sheared off its drive, nudging it aside without killing the crew. "They're controlling the battle space," an aide whispered. "Not just winning it." More data surfaced. Processing, manifests. Species quotas, attrition curves, the cold arithmetic of compliance. Keth watched faces around the gallery change as the implications spread. This was not a border action. This was infrastructure. An economy built on forced labor and disappearance, hidden behind elegant language and energy doctrines. Rhea's voice cut in again, quieter now. "For the record," she said, "we consider forced processing a crime. Any vessel continuing such operations after this timestamp will be treated as hostile." A stinger of silence followed. "We don't kill prisoners." The sentence carried no threat. It did not need one. Coalition fire slackened further as captains weighed orders against exposure. Some powered down weapons entirely. Others broke formation to escort civilian traffic. The casualty counter stopped climbing as fast. Evacuation. "Rate increasing," the analyst reported. 10 million clear, 15. Human ships took hits during the process. Stray fire, debris impacts. They absorbed it without complaint, holding lanes open until the last transports passed through. At Siambi-Irim, 20 million evacuated, Reyes spoke once more. "Civilian lanes are closed," she said. "This engagement is now military only." The human formation tightened again, guns reorienting with deliberate calm. The scale had been revealed. This was no longer about who could destroy whom. It was about who decided what kind of galaxy survived afterward. The humans did not celebrate. Evacuation lanes sealed, and the battle space narrowed. Internal human traffic spiked. Encrypted bursts between ships, logistics packets unfolding with practiced efficiency. To the coalition analysts watching, it looked less like improvisation and more like rehearsal. "They're cycling to Phase 3, the analyst said. "Doctrine-based." Keth's gaze hardened. They expected this. Data bled through open channels as human networks stabilized the corridor they had carved. Training logs surfaced, simulation overlays. Years of drills indexed against scenarios the Council had assumed were theoretical at best. Energy-dominant adversary. Numerical disadvantage exceeding 100 to 1. Civilian presence inside engagement envelope. The humans had names for it. Mass. Endurance protocol, the analyst read aloud. Version 7. Human ships rotated damaged hull sections outward, presenting fresh armor. Crews moved with calm precision through scorched compartments, sealing breaches, rerouting power, treating injuries without halting combat readiness. Casualty numbers remained low, not because the battle was gentle, but because they had trained to bleed slowly. They've normalized sustained impact, an aide said. Psychologically. On Blackstar, crew status indicators pulsed green, an amber, rarely red. Marines locked down boarding corridors that had never been breached. Gunners checked rails by hand even as autoloaders cycled. No one rushed. No one froze. A human voice appeared on a coalition subchannel, not addressed to command, but to ships drifting, damaged, uncertain. If you've powered down weapons, the voice said, hold position. Mark your hulls with white light. We will not fire. Several coalition vessels complied. Human targeting brackets faded from them immediately. They built restraint into their fire control, Keth said quietly. More data surfaced. Fleet composition. Hardened crews rotated through. In border wars, pirate suppression, disaster response. The same ships that fought here had pulled survivors from irradiated cities and held evacuation lines against asteroid storms. They were not specialists. They were generalists trained for collapse. Human doctrine emphasized endurance, not dominance. Absorb the opening blow, close the distance, break geometry, control space. Then decide. Keth felt the shape of it settle into place. This battle was not an anomaly. It was a proof of concept executed under live fire. They prepared to fight. Us specifically, an aide said. No, Keth replied. They prepared to fight anyone. A new overlay appeared, projected unintentionally through the shared battle space. Human war college simulations, red fleets labeled with unfamiliar names, outer rim profiles, unknown mass signatures, exterminator-class threat markers. They've been planning for worse, the analyst whispered. Human ships completed their reset in under 11 minutes. Ammunition levels reported green. Heat dissipated, drives stabilized, the wedge reformed. Tighter than before, scarred hulls locking into place like teeth. Blackstar's captain transmitted once more, this time only to Coalition Command. We have completed humanitarian obligations, Reyes said. We are ready to continue. No bravado, no declaration of supremacy, just readiness. The Coalition fleet, still larger by orders of magnitude, drifted in uneasy disarray. They had seen the humans endure energy fire, collapse formations, evacuate millions, and reset without pause. Preparedness was no longer theoretical. It was visible, measurable, and waiting. Collapse did not arrive as a scream. It came as a sequence. Blackstar. Advanced at 0.06 C, not accelerating now but steering, the human wedge widened into layered arcs, each ship assigned a corridor of denial. Fire control solutions updated in rolling waves, not to maximize kills, but to minimize uncertainty. Coalition vessels found themselves bracketed from multiple vectors, escape paths narrowing into funnels of bad choices. Second engagement phase initiated, the analyst reported, the human fleet executing sector-by-sector dominance. They began at the fractures, railguns fired again, slower this time, deliberate. Each slug targeted propulsion, command spines, weapon mounts. Ships died less often now. They were instead crippled, adrift, blind, harmless. The casualty counter rose in steadier increments, numbers climbing with methodical certainty. 100 ships disabled, 200. Missiles followed, not in saturation, but in pairs. One to strip defenses, one to end resistance if it continued. When a coalition cruiser powered down after the first impact, the second missile veered away, self-destructing harmlessly. They're offering exits, an aide said. At gunpoint. Yes. And it was working. Coalition fire became sporadic. Some captains fought on, clinging to doctrine and pride. They died faster. Others shut down weapons, broadcasting compliance codes. Human targeting faded from them in seconds. At 0.08 AU, a pocket of resistance tried to surge through a thinning arc, attempting massed acceleration to break free. Blackstar responded by firing 3 nuclear devices in a staggered pattern, not to destroy the ships outright, but to collapse space around them. Radiation walls bloomed, debris fields thickened. The pocket slammed into its own chaos. 47 ships lost in under 10 seconds. The rest surrendered. This is not a rout, Keth said hoarsely. It's a dismantling, the analyst nodded. Human losses remain low. 4 ships destroyed, 12 heavily damaged. Coalition losses now exceed 6,000 vessels neutralized. 6,000. The number echoed across the gallery like a verdict read aloud. Human ships pressed outward, expanding their controlled volume, kilometer by kilometer. Every maneuver forced the coalition into worse geometry. Energy weapons fired at suboptimal angles. Formations never fully reformed. Command cohesion degraded as human electronic warfare stripped synchronization from the edges inward. They're decapitating command nets, an aide said, without touching the core. Blackstar did not chase fleeing ships beyond controlled space. When vessels attempted blind jumps, human missiles intercepted jump capacitor signatures, forcing reversion without catastrophic failure. Escape was denied without extermination. Hours ticked by, 2 hours 4. By the 6th hour, the battle map no longer resembled an engagement. It looked like a controlled demolition. Coalition ships clustered in powerless knots, drifting under human guns. Others held position with weapons cold, white lights burning against scarred hulls. Final tally approaching, the analyst said. In 9,700 coalition vessels neutralized. Remaining ships compliant. The last holdout fired a single futile energy lance at a human frigate holding a corridor edge. The frigate absorbed it, armor flaring, then returned. Fire with 1 rail round. The holdout went dark. Silence spread. Human ships did not cheer. They did not close in. They held space. Guns steady. Sensors wide. Prisoner markers populated the tactical display. 14,000 vessels flagged for boarding, aid, and custody. Blackstar drifted at the center of it all, scarred, intact, unbowed. This is the end state, Keth murmured. Total control without total destruction. The coalition fleet, once elegant, overwhelming, was finished as a fighting force. Not annihilated, reduced, contained, measured. Human dominance filled the void where certainty had been. The collapse was complete. All that remained was to decide what it meant. The guns stayed silent because the humans chose silence. As the last coalition vessel powered down, Blackstar opened wideband transmission. No triumph marked the signal, no demand. Just a clear channel carrying authority earned, not claimed. This is Captain Reyes, the voice said. Hostilities are concluded. Prisoner tags populated the tactical field. 14,000 vessels flagged, crews accounted for, life support stable. Human boarding craft launched in measured numbers, unarmed except for tools and medics. They did not rush. They did not threaten. Keth watched in disbelief as human teams crossed hulls that hours ago had tried to kill them. Wounded coalition crew were stabilized first. Weapons were safed. Command officers were isolated, not beaten. They're documenting everything, an aide said. Biometrics, logs, orders. Yes, Keth replied quietly. For trials. Reyes spoke again, this time directly to Coalition Command. You will be detained, she said. You will receive medical care. You will be questioned under recorded process. Those responsible for forced processing will stand trial. Those who complied under duress will be treated accordingly. No executions. No summary judgments. The gallery filled with low, uncertain noise. This was not how wars ended. Council authority unraveled in real time. Regional fleets, seeing the terms offered, transmitted surrender codes without being engaged. Systems long. Compliant by fear began broadcasting archived evidence. Orders signed, quotas filled, lives reduced to throughput. "They're not just breaking us," an aide whispered. "They're exposing us. Yes, and there would be no way to hide again." Coalition captain attempted to bargain, invoking council immunity and historical mandate. Reyes's response was immediate. "You have jurisdiction over nothing here," she said. "Sovereignty is not granted by exploitation." The channel closed. Human ships repositioned, not to threaten, but to separate detainees from witnesses, to preserve evidence, to prevent reprisals, control without cruelty, dominance without indulgence. Keth felt the weight of it settle. The council had ruled through inevitability, the belief that resistance only made suffering worse. The humans had inverted that logic. Resistance, measured and disciplined, had ended the suffering. "We don't kill prisoners." The line echoed again, no longer a warning, but a fact demonstrated across thousands of hulls. By the end of the hour, council command codes were void. Member systems began issuing provisional withdrawals. Treaties collapsed under the simple revelation of choice. Human sovereignty was not declared, it was assumed. Blackstar held position at the center of the wreckage, its scarred hull a quiet testament to endurance. Around it, the galaxy shifted, power flowing away from those who had taken it for granted. Keth closed his eyes as custody fields locked around his own flagship. The war was over, judgment was just beginning. The silence after victory was deliberate. Blackstar remained where it was, engines at idle, guns powered but cold. Around it, human ships held a wide perimeter, custody zones stable, evacuation lanes long closed. Coalition vessels drifted under guard, their authority reduced to identifiers and recorded logs. Sovereignty did not announce itself, it manifested. Human command traffic spread outward, formal and restrained. Notices of jurisdiction. Temporary. Security guarantees. Open channels for systems that had never been asked what they wanted. The message was consistent across every frequency. Human forces would withdraw when trials were secured, prisoners transferred, and civilians confirmed. Safe, no tribute demanded. No territory seized. The galaxy adjusted. Former council systems began rerouting traffic through human-secured corridors by choice. Merchant fleets requested escorts. Border worlds transmitted recognition packets, not out of fear, but calculation. Stability had changed hands. Blackstar's long-range array swept beyond the wreckage field, out past known trade lanes, into the thin dark where maps grew uncertain. Data returned slowly at first, then cohered into patterns that tightened every human posture on the bridge. Mass shadows. Old ones. Contacts beyond the rim. 4,000 light-years out, moving without drives, the Coalition recognized. Energy signatures, unlike Council tech. Hull silhouettes not elegant, not modular, purpose-built for eradication. Outer rim confirmation, a sensor officer reported. Exterminator-class profiles match archival unknowns, vectoring inward. No alarm followed. No rush. Reyes acknowledged the report with a single nod. Log it. Begin comparative analysis. Human doctrine flowed forward seamlessly, as if the battle just fought had been one more drill completed. War colleges would update scenarios. Armor would be reforged. Crews rotated, rested, retained. They had not come unprepared. Around Blackstar, Coalition prisoners watched the humans work. There was no hatred in it, no celebration, just method and patience. The unsettling realization spread among them that this had never been about revenge. It had been about readiness. A final transmission went out, not as a threat, but as a statement of record. This region is under human protection, Reyes said. Divorced processing is prohibited. Slavery is prohibited. Non-compliance will be met with decisive force, followed by due process. The message ended there. Beyond the rim, something vast continued to move. Human sensors tracked it, calculated, waited. The war that had brought the Blackstar here was finished. Its outcome settled, its moral frame fixed in the aftermath. Humanity stood scarred but sovereign, unchallenged not because it claimed dominance, but because it demonstrated restraint after absolute control. The galaxy would remember that distinction, and when the next threat crossed the dark between stars, it would find humanity already armored, already disciplined, already watching the horizon.